This book is wonderful, actually.
I was very excited to have you in the book, Simon. You and I
Yeah,
go way back. In fact, I want to credit myself, perhaps naively, to actually getting you here
yeah,
to ASU and also to Arizona. And when I had the opportunity to put this volume together, I started looking at what was missing, and what was missing was an indigenous perspective.
right.
And for me, you can't have a conversation that's comprehensive without an indigenous perspective, and yours is precisely that. So you focus on language in the book. Tell me why language was what you saw as your contribution in this particular volume.
Well, language is because we all know language, even if we may be just one language or two or three or whatever. But language is really the source of which thought and feelings and expression is, and I think that language is necessary in order for me to point to that tree and around and above us. We can't have that without language as a human being.
Connect that to your focus when you talked about. I think I like what I most like about your essay, and not just its focus, but the way you start and end the essay. You ask the question, justice? You're asking me about justice?
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful way to start and also to end. How did you fill in that space between that first question of you're asking me about justice, and then the way you ended it by saying you're asking me about justice?
Uh, well, I think to me, it's natural to think of who and what you are at the beginning. You know, is he asking me or is he not asking me? He's talking to me. So I have to take that responsibility of accepting what and who and how I am as a Hanno, as a people, as a person.
So say a little bit more about the language, particularly when you talked about the assimilation. We do have an essay in there about architecture and boarding schools, but that essay is from this sort of omniscient narrator who's looking from the outside in.
Yeah,
You're a person on the inside of that.
I would have to say yes. Otherwise I'm denying myself, or others.
Hmm.
But to know that there's consciously and conscientiously, uh, I have to say yes. Yes, that's the way I am.
And so, at what point did you? Because I read the essay multiple times and just wanted to just thank you for, first of all, the vulnerability, but also the courage to challenge what you knew was not right, even if you didn't have the language
Yeah.
to express that.
Yeah, I think that I asked myself that question because it's part of the responsibility, obligation that we have to be, I guess, aware of ourselves and to bring that out into the open. That when you're in conversation with someone else, that they also, he or she, are basing what we say upon that, I don't know what, beginning point. I guess it's
Hmm.
really a point of responsibility to
Hmm.
oneself or to life in general.
Hmm.
And that comes from the Ako Me Emeetsi, that is the way the person of the Akuma belief system wants you to be honest with yourself about yourself. This is who and what I am.
Well, and then the fact that you're a poet seems to add a whole nother layer
Yeah,
to how you are using words and language as resistance.
yeah.
Maybe you could say a little bit about that as a poet, particularly.
Yes, it gets to be somewhat troublesome because in the kind of lifetime that we are within right now, with the modern sense of whatever being, you have to admit that I don't know really, but this is what I first learned at the beginning of my awareness of self when I was a toddler, I guess, something like that. At that time, of course, that was the only language I knew from my grandma and grandmothers and my mom and my dad. They all spoke in the Akumeshia, in the Akuma way.
And have you taught that to your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
I tried, and some of them do find it important, you know. But so much of what America is, or the modern world is, you know, it's not just the USA, America,
Right.
it's the world, and how it's whatever multiplied its awareness of self into so many, especially into mechanization and you know, computerization. It drives me up the wall.
Well, but what you remind us of is that no matter how advanced technologically and otherwise, humanity is at the core of this. And when we start losing that humanity, then we've lost
We
something
have
far
to
greater.
Fight for it.
Yeah.
And right now, the U.S. and the world really is facing that fight.
Yeah. Well,
How
I think
it's going to resolve, who knows?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, you have written multiple books. People have written books about you. But I think people are reading this book in this moment because they are looking for something that creates community, that also shows what other people are doing. And if people are really committed, then they will continue to do what they're doing, or they will reach out and connect with people who are doing that work. So that was my motivation for creating it, and I'm glad that yours is one of the menu items that people can sample on this buffet.
Well, I think it's possible to, you know, to come down to a point that's you have the ability to point to say and to describe, and because it can become, I think, too much of a challenge, you know, and the challenge to other people is not enough to oneself. I get sometimes sort of frustrated at, you know, very close friends and relatives, you know, when I sometimes simplify and they just say, no, we're talking about you and we're talking about me. And they, you know, you know, it's a, we're talking about you and me and what we do and what we say, and it's as if, you know, you need to bring it back to yourself and not just away from oneself, in order to sort of unstring yourself. You know, I think in arguments, in discussions, you know, we get that, we think that being tied up and tangled is real life. Sometimes it feels like that, but you know, sometimes it's just a way to get out of what you really need to say.
Well, I am grateful to you for our years of friendship, but also for what you continue to bring in this movement for justice. So thank you.
Well,
again.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
For saying that, Neil. You know, because I'm glad that I came to work with you, and I was very happy, you know, to move from Toronto to back what I call home. You know, and it's not the same land. Aquila and Phoenix are not exactly alike, but in some ways they are in terms of its people, Noyo Hanoitzen, which is the people that lived there and have lived there for a long, long time.
Well, you have brought wisdom, you've brought experience, and you brought a lot of learning. So I am grateful and am pleased that you are so close now that we can do this more often.
Yeah, and I like this area. Akola has had a long time connection with the Phoenix Valley, and we are relatives in some sense, even in the prayers and the long stories.
Okay.
The people to Yuna, Kunantich, the people that live to the south of us, are in relationship to each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish this over.